Hey everybody, it's John Wolpert with the Baseline Show, and we're here with a whole bunch of people from Oasis and from the Baseline community. We'll be talking about all of the new stuff going on with the TSC and with everything else. I'm going to take a second here to find why I'm hearing myself in my ear. Yeah, there we go. That helps. It's good to see everybody here. Andreas, Ryan, Kyle, Thomas, Claudia Rausch, Janet Dunlap, Jack Wiring, Sonal Patel, Anant Natarajan, Mark Haddle, Chet Ensign, and Luis Hamilton. It's good to see you all. Today we have some announcements to make about the new technical steering committee who's we finished the vote for the 2021-22 technical steering committee for the baseline protocol. We're going to be talking about that. And then Sonal Patel is going to be interviewing Janet Dunlap about engineering and coordinating systems under zero knowledge. And then we'll open it up to the team. So without further ado, Chet and Claudia, first of all, we should say thank you for conducting this, the vote. It sounds like we had some great results and participation by the standards bodies. Why don't you take it away and tell us the results?
Yes, you did. For those of you who may not have been here for the entire drama, the TSC is the EEA Community Projects Project Governing Board has set up the TSCs for that project so that they are annual elections. So this was actually the second annual election, but the first one where we really put the procedure in place. So we first had a nomination period that I think, I don't recall whether that lasted 1 week or two, but you had, let me remind myself of the number there. 19 candidates stepped forward for 11 seats. So it was definitely not sleepy time as in most standards organizations. This was a genuine expression of interest in playing a role in the TSC. Just to recap briefly, the Technical Steering Committee, or TSC, in an Oasis Open project is a group that actually does work. Don't just meet, once a month and kind of like look at some reports and maybe vote on something. They actually, it's the TSC that's really doing the day-to-day oversight of what's going on in the project. People, anyone can come in and participate, of course. Anyone can open issues, comment on issues, make pull requests, what have you. But it's the TSC that's ultimately directing the maintainers on which ones to approve, sort of setting technical directions to go in, actually getting in and doing work themselves. So it is a very active body that has an outsized impact on how the project itself evolves over time. As I said, we had 19 eligible candidates. So we opened up the ballot before or just after the baseline show 2 weeks ago. We opened up the ballot. We actually had eligible voters were anyone who had made a pull request and had it accepted, who basically had a commit within the last seven months. And we actually had 40 eligible voters on the list, a fair number of whom said, "Oh wait, I have to do that to vote," and then ran off and did something that could get committed. So I forget Sonal, but it seems to me like 10 people, like in the last 2 days, 10 people piled on with, "Oh wait, here's something that needs to be fixed." So so that was quite an expression of interest as well. Of those, there were 25 votes cast, which is a really respectable margin as well. You know, that not only do we have people who are interested in voting, but when they got down to it, they actually voted. So there were 25 votes cast. And the people who will be on the technical steering committee are, in no particular order, John Wolpert, Kyle Thomas, Stefan Schmidt, Andreas Freund, Karthik Solapuram, Ryan Fish, Samrat Kishore, Mehran Shikari, Cale Tweeter, Jack Wearing, and Luis Suarez. So that is your 2021-2022 Technical Steering Committee. Congratulations to you all. One reminder, if you have not filled out an individual CLA, an ICLA, I'm pretty sure all of you have, but just if you haven't, just check with Claudia or me, and we'll tell you how to do that. That's required of TSC members. And that's it, John, unless anybody's got any questions or comments.
Chad, thanks for that. I was just trying to update the.
You were trying to get a commit in at the last minute?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to put the names of everybody up on there.
Okay.
So I was just finishing that. So that's on the chat. Yeah. So congratulations to everybody that was elected, or condolences if you were hoping not to get elected. You're in it now. It's a terrific group. The last group was terrific as well. And I have to say that there are several people that didn't make it on this list that sure deserve it. And we hope that, we need you to stay involved. As I said, I would have, if I didn't get elected, I wouldn't change what I'm doing for the community. I'm hoping everybody feels the same. And more importantly, equally importantly, we're going to want to focus on, expanding the tent of people that have roles of importance on the team. Mark Haddle right here has been one of the most supportive people of the community I've ever seen. Mark, I know you didn't make it on the TSC, but part of me thinks you should chair the thing. We hope that I think we ought to find something important for you in particular. So congratulations, everybody, and to anybody that was hoping to get on that list. It's always next year, or you could always find out where one of these people lives and take them out. No, I'm kidding. Have a new vote. No, it's great to see everybody. Thanks for that, Chet and Claudia. And I'd like to put a special, I think we all would like to say a special thank you to Sonal Patel for having a huge hand in what I think is a remarkable turnout. Thank you, Sonal.
You're welcome. And just to second what John said, anybody who wasn't elected, please still stay deep in the community. We need leads for the core devs, for the outreach team. And right now we have a ton of folks interested in joining the meetings. So if you didn't make it on the TSC, I could still use your help in many other ways. So please reach out to me.
Right on. Just a quick recap on how it's probably a good time of year to do this. A quick recap on how the baseline protocol team is organized. It's not actually that simple. There are two major organizations involved. There's organizing organizations. There's the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, and there is the OASIS standards body, oasisopen.org. And the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance has entered into an agreement with the OASIS organization, such that we call the projects under joint management EEA community projects. So the baseline community is organized under what we call the EEA Community Projects Initiative. which is sponsored very heavily by the EEA and operated by Oasis, folks like Chet and the team. This is especially for cases where the Ethereum community needs to organize open participation in something like Baseline, where it's not just a members only thing, which the EEA is members only. That it's an industry standards body where participation is restricted to members, whereas what we do is not restricted to members or sponsors. Anyone can participate, and Oasis maintains the legal and organizational system that allows us to do that without doing things like messing up intellectual property or a certificate of originality or that sort of thing. Chet, do you have anything else you want to say about that?
No, that's pretty good. I mean, the Oasis Open as an organization has got a long tested governance policy that dates back into the 90s that is recognized pretty much globally. We've got relationships with all of the major standards development organizations. And so one of the benefits of working in this somewhat complicated framework, it does add some rules and procedures and things on top of the work that gets done. But one of the advantages of it is that becoming an Oasis standard, so it will be an EEA community projects Oasis standard. So we're working in a combination, but underneath the Oasis rules, so that it can follow all of the steps to become approved as an Oasis standard. That gives it a level of recognition, sort of globally, that can help with adoption, and it puts the community in a position to be able to submit the Oasis standard to a standards development organization like ISO or ITU or IEC for international adoption, which makes the Europeans go, yippee! Now we can trust it. So it essentially assists with adoption. And your standing globally, and so that's part of the benefit you're getting out of this particular partnership and the additional work that goes with it.
Hey, Jack, I think you should turn that one segment with Chet saying "Yippee! Now we can trust it" into a meme. Can you guys handle that? I want to see that all over the Twitterverse. It's going to make me so happy. I'm kidding. Okay, yeah. So that's that's the high level, and then within our community, we have three layers of organization. The project governance board, made up of sponsors, and then the technical steering committee that we just voted in. Notably, you could spend all you want on sponsoring. You can pour money on this organization, and please do. And that'll buy you a seat on the PGB and on the project governance board, but it will not give you a vote in the technical steering committee, which really makes the decisions about what gets in and it doesn't get in. And that's by design, because we want the community of contributors to be the deciders ultimately through representation. And so the only way to get a vote for the folks that we just elected is to be a contributor to one of our baseline repos, which I'll put up the caption for that in a minute. Here's one of them, baseline standard. And then baseline, the GitHub repo for baseline is just github.com/EEA-Oasis/baseline. And so if you're in that repo, you will you're contributing anything that gets merged to main, you'll be a voter. And now we have, I don't know, like approaching 100 contributors, I think. So that's how this works. And so the project governance board steps in when the TSC can't agree. The TSC steps in when the contributors, the core devs, and other people that can maintain the code and the standard can't agree on things. That's how it works. The core dev community in particular, which Sonal is especially focused on, is really spinning up a really great participation already. And the TSC will be able to help with appointing new members to the core devs community. I think that's all I have to say about that. Any questions? Sonal, any thoughts, comments?
Nope.
Great. So that's all our business for this wonderful Wednesday, October. I don't. We should have come in costumes. Missed an opportunity there. Okay, so
does the baseline T-shirt count?
Huh?
I was just saying, does the baseline T-shirt count?
Hey, you got a baseline T-shirt on there? Cool, man.
Oh yeah.
All right. All I got is this lousy hat. And some really cool stickers that they made for the All Things Open conference. I will say the All Things Open conference in Raleigh last week was terrific, and we were well represented. I hope you guys have seen they did publicize a video from that, and we built some really great relationships with the open source community at that time. There was quite a few blockchain presentations there, more than the previous 2 years ago when the last time they actually had it in person. So that speaks to blockchain in general's participation in the open source community, which is great. Okay, Sonal, why don't you take it away and introduce Janet Dunlap, and we'll talk about that.
All right, sounds good. So we have Janet Dunlap with us today, and I had the pleasure of meeting Janet at ETH Atlanta. And we started talking, and she mentioned that she's in the civil and industrial engineering space. And I was shocked because it's a whole different world that a lot of us aren't aware of. And she had an interest in Baseline and some of the other companies and projects that were at ETH Atlanta. So I was super interested in hearing more from her. So I did us all the pleasure of inviting her to join us on the show today and introducing herself and explaining why she's interested in Baseline for the engineering space. So Janet, if you'd like to introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Sure. Thanks, Sonal. And thanks for having me on Baseline. This is great. So I am a civil structural engineer, not a software engineer, which probably most of you guys are. But I have been in this space in the software engineering space for the last like 3 or 4 years. And my goal really is to collect the knowledge from the engineering community and put it onto an open source collaborative platform. So it has a trusted ledger source that's accurate and agreed upon. So instead of supply chain information being put onto record, it is more knowledge-based with tangible assets being in the field in the construction industry. So the reason why I've been going to different venues, I'm really trying to look for a platform to put this information on to. What interested me about Baseline was that it linked people from small who do small volume and linking them together so that they are all communicating together on the same place, even though they might have different forms of information and different forms of data. So that was one of the biggest things that I liked about Baseline. There were a few other things that I heard on kind of more of the NFT part, where my goal is to have each of the drawings or detailed drawings that are done in CAD, have them be assignable to people that are being reviewed, and there would be an originator and then if there was more something else built upon that same type of design, they would, each get a certain amount of tokenization when those designs are used. So there was some information there that I thought was useful. So really, my target market are professional engineers. So that's kind of the same thing. You have to have a license to practice engineering in every state. So they are my target market. They are the people who direct the entire construction industry. So they're the ones who tell people what to build and how to build it. And they are the only ones that are able to do that. So really, this touches on the whole construction industry, which is a $1.36 trillion business, huge. It's not big. It's very large. I need the resources from a bunch of different engineers putting in their information from all over the world, all over the country. We each have our own different specialties. I'm in Florida. We have wind loads. If you're out in California, you're going to have some earthquake loads, and if you're in Colorado, you're going to have snow loads. That snow loads and earthquake loads are not my specialty. Wind loads are. So it would be very specialized by location. Which is why I want everyone to be putting in the same information. And really what it does is it standardizes a lot of the construction practices. We're kind of all over the board right now. People still do hand calculations. The majority of the engineers are when I was going through college, I knew that I wanted to go into engineering and that there would be a reduction in engineering people due to the baby boomers, those guys kind of moving out at some point. And so when I graduated from college, all of the people who thought like me, who thought like an engineer, most of them went into either investment banking or even, or they went into the internet, which was new then. And the engineers now getting out of college, they're not going into structural engineering. They're going into software engineering, where you can make that many times much more money. So my concern is that being in this space, I'm worried that, we're going to end up being in some world where we're going to have a bunch of people with their VR headsets on, living in a metaverse, and they're gonna, take their headset off and look around and notice that the buildings are crumbling, and then they're gonna be like, "Never mind, it doesn't matter." I'm going back to my
I think
universe.
that's Snow Crash. In fact, I think that's Neil Stephenson's book right there in a nutshell.
Oh yeah,
Janet, I'm really interested in this, in what you're doing. If I can ask a couple questions, I'd love to.
please do.
Okay, so first of all, one of the things you said that was kind of interesting, I mean, as you know, or you probably learned at the last event that we were at in Atlanta, baselining is really about coordination under zero knowledge, right? It's not really about putting data on a blockchain. In fact, it's the opposite of that. So when you mentioned before, you want to put everybody putting their information on a thing.
Mhm.
That's a very SaaS kind of a thought, or maybe a blockchain as database kind of a thought, which we're very against, right? We're not, I like SaaS, okay, but you don't want to put that data on a blockchain, right? Because each of the people with those drawings, that data, those specifications, that's private information to them, right? That's important that it doesn't get out in the open. Is that correct?
Sort of, yes.
And so they're CAD drawings, that sort of thing. They don't want their competitors seeing those drawings, right?
Well, that's the traditional way of looking at things, and that's not how I see things moving forward, because we don't have enough. There aren't enough people who have this knowledge to be able to pass it on to.
But if that's not the case, then it's not a baseline problem, right? Just throw up either a SaaS or put it on the blockchain, I guess, or put it on IPFS, addressed by the blockchain.
Can I interject here just to
Sure.
get to what Janet's getting at, right? So Janet, my name is Anant Nagarajan. I'm a
Hey,
PE
Anant,
as well.
I think you got to pull your mic away
Okay,
from your
yeah, the
shirt.
same problem, right?
Yeah.
Just hold it here. Is that better?
That's better.
Okay, so my name is Anant. I'm a professional engineer as well, a PE. I come from the offshore oil and gas world, so conventional engineering. I've been a project manager for the last 10 years in offshore oil and gas. Same issues with managing teams of engineers and so on, and building big things, right? Project plans, coordination, and so on. I'm also working on a solution, for project management in engineering, in the engineering construction and industry, and we'll talk more about that offline. But I'm just trying to understand what you said, right, and also trying to address what John's concerns were. From what I understand, one of the things that you were trying to do is to tokenize ownership of IP in the form of drawings, so you can license it out beyond the confines of the firm that it's been generated. So you have the advantage of actually, that this knowledge actually gets used, across, especially in civil engineering, right? I mean, there's a lot of scope for reuse of this. So essentially, the tokenization of IP in the form of these drawings proves the ownership and allows people to generate revenue from that IP in the form of these engineering drawings, or even a BIM, right? Building information model in 3D that's generated, right? So you're basically taking that off the confines of an enterprise and putting it in a tokenized form to where it can create more value both for others and for the people who developed it. Is that correct?
That is correct. Very, very good.
So to both of you, then the question is, if the data is supposed to be shared widely, there's no compartmentalization requirements, then I should think that's you put that up on a SaaS, either on a SaaS basis or you put it up on IPFS. You don't have to baseline some private databases, right?
Well,
go ahead.
Okay, sorry, Janet. I just wanted to address John's concerns, right? Because since I've talked to him before, I have some feeling of where he's coming from. I think, John, the thing is to be able to put the proof of ownership, like of a drawing or something, which could reside on a private system, right? So you take a hash of a BIM
Sure.
model, right, or a CAD model, and theoretically you can put, this is just an example, right? Maybe this is what Janet's going towards, right? Put the proof of ownership. You just look at it in terms of the tree trunk thing that you've been working on too, right? So put a proof of ownership of that piece of data, whether it's a drawing or a BIM model, where it is verifiable that it belongs to you, and any licenses are also verifiable back to the source, right? So
Well,
that's
even better, right? If you could say the low, and this again, this is only important if you can't share the actual data, right? But you could prove that a particular load tolerance has been met in this design. You say, I'm not going to show you the data, but I have a proof that this requirement is met. Now that starts to get interesting, right? But if you can just show the data, then you have no problem that really baseline addresses, I don't think. Mark, that's not your name.
Yeah, I actually was looking a little bit about the, when it comes to proving ownership, where is the challenge that the ownership has to be proven? Is it generally due to construction financing? Is it done through the insurers? Is it done by the local local government? It's one of those things where, I want to sit there and say, yeah, I can actually do this, but what's the environment to where I would have to prove?
So the whole point is that the information will be available not only to the contractor who's purchasing the drawings, but it's going to be available to the building department, who is the overall person who's taking a look at the drawings. And when building department sees that these drawings are provided through this system, they would say, okay, it's not just one engineer really who's looking at this stuff. There have been multiple engineers who agree with the information. And it's all standardized. So right now, for instance, there may be, just in my local area, my town, there could be 5 different door buck details, something simple like that, which doesn't make any sense. So if an inspector was to see one standardized industry-wide detail for that, they would say, okay, yeah, this is all fine. Well, not only that, they're going to be able to take that information. That information is going to be available on a phone. So say we've got some inexperienced person who's going out to a job, to your house, to go do a remodel on any one of your houses. And he comes out there, his supervisor's not there, and he says, all right, I'm supposed to be installing a roof. He would be able to look on his phone and say, all right, I'm supposed to use 15, 32nd inch plywood. I got to use this gun. I've got these screws that are this long. They've got to be 6 inches in the field, 4 inches on that edge. That's the way it has to be, designed. And he has now a direct way to get the information, whereas before he doesn't have really a direct way to get to an engineer and to an engineer's knowledge. And then say he gets pulled off and he has to go do something else, whatever it is, that's not in his expertise. He is going to be able to pull it up and say, this is what I'm supposed to do. Now, the benefits to that are then when the inspector comes, the building official inspector comes, he's going to look at it. He can also pull up the same information on his phone and say, hey, yep, these people did the correct information. They did it correctly or whatever. And so now, there wasn't a supervisor there, the information got through the inspections got done. So therefore your construction time just got decreased rather than, waiting to call back the inspector, find the subcontractor to say, hey, you guys installed this incorrectly, all of that. And then on top of that, what happens is that insurance companies, they know that that those buildings are designed correctly, they're built correctly. And so they're like, I would put more faith into that, and therefore your insurance rates will be lower. So it's a business automation, which is why I liked the baseline, and I liked the tree trunk too. That was the other part that was interesting to me. And really right now, people have very scattered what is traditional in keeping this information is not readily available. It's not easy to access. And so for a real estate agent, they'd be able to, log into an address and they'd be able to get certain information about the house where, it's just at the touch of their fingers rather than I've got to go to the building department, get the plans are on microfiche, the whole thing. So that's the kind of the goal.
Well, and I would also sit there and say as the project moves forward and stuff, a lot of it's done under construction bridge financing. And you've got, one community to where you have the architects and engineers and all the contractors put together. And then as well as the builder's risk insurance that goes in there. They operate generally in a siloed mechanism that is outside of the financing portion of it, to where there generally is a lag between sharing that data to say where are we as far as on the timeline of this construction, and that's for if you're going to have all right, we have completed all of the framing, we've completed all of the masonry work, we now need another a funding draw from the construction loan to start superstructure work or or whatever is going to need to be required to sit there and have the milestone for the evolution of the project. And having a way of actually being able to tie all of these together would be very compelling so that everybody can say, hey, you know, it's not so much that I need to protect so much my IP, it's just I need to know and be able to prove that your record keeping matches mine. And right now, in the traditional sense, you do have quite a lag between the people actually performing the construction duties and those that are financing and certifying them.
Well, it's quite interesting to listen to this problem statement, right? Because this is exactly what I set out to do, you know, with the platform that we're building. And you know, there's a paper, you know, that was published earlier this year in an ACM publication, right, that describes the architecture. So basically, what we were doing is to bring all of these parties together, you know, to have a trusted source of truth that, you know, shows the project progress, you know, has the schedules, the payment information, the value that's created, and tokenize these assets even as they're being generated, right? Even as the project is being built, right? To tokenize, you know, the different parts of the project. So you have a tokens akin to NFTs, because NFTs are non-fungible tokens, right? That's literally what they are. And if you build a project is a unique, you know, asset, right? That is created through effort, right, by different parties that come together, often with uncoordinated information, you know, operating through different silos because you have organizational boundaries, you have financials, you have regulators, you have, you know, all kinds of parties on different systems. So the, you know, there's a few different things that's all being discussed here, right? So what you're talking about, you know, this is about sharing information between all parties, having a trusted source to you know, with very verifiable schedule progress, you know, and so on. And I think what Janet was describing earlier was a little, sorry. So what Janet was describing when we started, right, was a way of sharing the IP for drawings that are generated beyond, you know, a certain project, right? So you have, let's say, a set of drawings that is built for, you know, housing development or whatever, right? So she was talking, and Janet, correct me if I'm wrong. She was talking about, you know, if you generate these house plans and development plans and whatnot, those same set of plans can be reused for another project, right? So how do you you know, share that information, prove that it's yours, and how do you generate revenue off of that? So in a way, I mean, part of the problem with our discussion is that we are mixing all of these issues together too, right? So yes, in an individual project, you know, you need to bring a lot of parties together to a trusted source of what is actually happening in a project, right? Asset creation, schedules, and so on. And then there is also the thing that I think Janet started our discussion with is that how do you generate revenue out of IP that you generate within a project outside of that project, right? So that's another use case, you know, for baseline, to where you prove that you own these project plans or something, you know, related to you know, like a BIM model or something like that.
Yeah, the key thing is, I'm curious about what are the platforms, the traditional platforms, right? AutoCAD is, you know, clearly one of them. You know, what are the traditional platforms? One of the nice things about baselining is that it's not a cold war with those platforms, right? SAP is a first-class citizen in baselining because you don't put the data on a blockchain, you leave it in SAP or Microsoft Dynamics or Neo4j or whatever your database is. So, and in terms of standardization, Janet, the power of that is, you know, you don't have to say, well, I mean, you know, for the last 6 years, I think we've been sort of not saying it, but it's implied that, hey, don't take, you know, let's migrate your data to this giant threat surface. People don't like that, right? So what baselining allows you to do is to bring more easily traditional systems of record players to the table to say, yeah, we're part of the standards because you're not going to threaten our business. You can baseline that AutoCAD system. And so the point would be bringing on AutoCAD to say, okay, well, either through an integration or by getting them directly involved and adding baselining capabilities and functions, features to their application, you'd have a one-click, baseline this, and then that can lead to the appropriate level of sharing with compartmentalization. Because I still submit, you don't want everybody seeing all this material, right? You want to prove things about it without seeing it. If that's not the problem, then I think you can do it any old way you like. Right. I think that I'll stand by that statement. What say you?
Well, and that's why I had originally thought of having it a hybrid open source, as in it would be open source for engineers to be able to look through calculations, look through all the proofs, look through all the information. So engineers would have, professional engineers would have access to that. So they would be.
I might suggest you use Git or GitHub.
Yeah. They would have access to all that information. But more importantly, the other part of it was that I really was hoping and that you'd actually be able to put in your plans and you would come a structurally designed set of plans based off of the computer models that are being built, the AI system that's being done in the background, and based off of what the information that's coming in and out. And that would all be within the engineer's realm. It would be a separate, and you would be getting tokens for doing that work. Now there would be a separate, those tokens would be valuable to.
So that's a tokenization scheme that is well understood in public blockchain. So you certainly can do that. I'm just missing the baseline part.
Well, really, it's the connectivity of how I'm going from very small entities to one large entity. The example that the example that I noted in the ETH Atlanta thing was the Kona project that you guys did with having, and I'm not familiar with Coca-Cola enough, but what it sounded like to me is that they're going to get, they had one repository where they needed to know how much grape juice they needed from one small vendor, how much red juice, how much orange juice.
Well, yes and no. If you have one repository, again, you don't need baselining. That's the whole point, right? Is if you have one repository, you've got one repository, right? If you can make that a blockchain, I will laugh at you, but you can. But if the whole point is, if there are many companies maintaining their own databases, their own systems of record, whether that's in Coke's case, whether that's QuickBooks because some small vendor is using QuickBooks, another vendor might be using their own proprietary SAP implementation. Coca-Cola itself uses SAP and Fabric for something. All of these different systems aren't going away, and they don't want them to go away, and they don't want to share the actual information between them. They want to prove that this company and that company have the same invoice without showing the invoice to anyone else. And that's what they're doing with. And then if you can do that, then factors can come in and say, well, I'll give you a lower price on buying that supplier's invoice because I'm confident at least that the buyer and the supplier have the same one, even though I don't have access to the buyer's database.
Right.
So that's the key to the pattern, right? If you have data that you can share liberally, or if you can get a bunch of companies to put it all in one place, then good on you. That's SaaS, or it's blockchain, or it's private blockchain. Although at that point, I will laugh at you for trying to put it on a private blockchain, because that's kind of my thing, is to laugh at people that do private blockchains. But yeah, you see the point.
So Janet, is there a platform that has, at least a commonality where all the people are going to be sharing the data? I mean, I would say it would probably start with the architect or the chief architect on a project, because they have the ultimate sign-off ability for all the construction phases. And I don't know if AIA, American Institute of Architects, has a type of platform that a lot of their members will use that then will have all of the other stakeholders subscribe to it in a publish and subscribe, schema. That they don't really need to do that anymore. And, and as I said before, the actual construction phase will work on that, but the lenders and the insurers are generally outside of that. And if you could have a way of tying all of them together, that would be quite powerful. Just because, and I'm not entirely certain as to how much, time loss is done because, oh, well, we're waiting on updated plans, or we're waiting on a construction draw, or we're waiting on a sign off from the building department, and we're just sitting there twiddling our thumbs. Because
and maybe the waiting is because there's a counterparty that just doesn't love the idea of giving up that information. Because that's what I see that in a lot of other fields where, what's really happening is people are dragging their feet on giving up actual data. So you can say, hey, look, I can prove that I followed the rules, but I'm not giving you my data. I suspect that there's better compliance.
Well, or if I could sit there and say, I have the confidence in this type of ability over there, I don't need to actually look at it because it matches what I have. So I don't need to take that extra time to actually sit back and go and compare it and look back and forth and okay, you would be able to have that, baseline true, baseline false. When it comes to that, this set of drawings or this, update in the specs matches and has been shared amongst the entire downstream community.
Yeah, that's exactly, those bring up some good points. The construction industry is one of the least progressive in the way of businesses. I mean, you guys are dealing with other businesses who are quite on top of that stuff. The construction industry is, they're literally writing, things on the scrap piece of cardboard paper. I
don't think we can help. I think that if one is not digitized, we're kind of out of the game there, right? You just have to kind of, again, make fun of them and say, look, join us in the 21st century. Thank you. And I often say, look, if your company or the counterparty you're working with doesn't give you digital information, consider stopping working with them because they're dangerous. The only thing that doesn't have a paper trail is paper, right? Stop working with them. Let's just get on with it. It's 2021, almost 2022. Companies that don't work that insist on continuing to work in paper need to be considered not trustworthy by and large. And so if they're already digital, then I think that what we're talking about plays to the conservatism of the community, of your community. And that is, if they're conservative but digital already, they don't want to put their data in a big honeypot run by someone else. They want their own databases. That's a conservative perspective. Baselining is perfect for that because you're not going to make them give up their database and go to a website and put all their data into that thing. You can say, no, keep your database. All we want to do is make sure you're running this little bit of gear that will make sure that the data in your database is consistent and following the correct rules with everybody else's.
So, John, let me just use that drawing, analogy, right, and do something with that. So, in engineering projects, construction projects, and so on, a set of drawings is generated by someone, right, and then that gets and that gets approved by different parties down the line. It could be a different department, engineering department, some kind of regulatory authority, the client, and so on, right? The construction schedule is really dependent on these projects, on these drawings being approved down the line, right? So now let us say that you want to have proof of a certain set of drawings being generated and sent to the next party down the line who might be in a completely different company. and them having, signed it and transmitting it to the next, person and so on, right? So essentially you want to have proof in a multi-party environment, right? And that's again, from a high level perspective, without getting into the details of how to do it, something that, baseline or something like baseline comes in to help, right? And this is, of course, a simple example, right? You can extrapolate it to many different scenarios in projects, like the bolting example, right? Or welding in offshore projects, for instance. There's a whole set of specifications developed by people, certifications for the welder, welding plans, all of these things come together when it's done. All of these things are done by different parties, generated by them. And you need to have the provability of where each set of information came from and who generated it and so on, right? So that's just to trying to give some more concrete examples with what we are talking about.
Oh, I would say another huge one would be within the construction wraps, where you have the insurance policy that's governing all of the risk transfer for the policy for the project. You have two types. You have OSIPs, owner-controlled insurance program, and then you have CSIPs, contractor-controlled insurance, which the two are basically almost interchangeable. It just depends on who has the ultimate ownership of it. And how those actually work is you've got builder's risk insurance for the structure as it's being built, or if you're rehabbing an existing structure, will it cover the existing structure while you are making modifications to it? But at the same time, you've got all of the trade contractors, all of the truckers, all of the suppliers, all of the fabricators are all bound in together in this large wrapped up insurance policy, which is generally the broker pretty much administers all of that and has to go back and forth to make sure everybody has their proper insurance certificates up to date, making sure that they have all the proper policy forms and all the endorsements to it. So that's one thing. And there's not really a universal shared platform. Generally, it's I think they've tried to do this over time. It's just that you still have so many people that do not have any type of synchronization, and that synchronization happens manually, and it's just a
By
very
email.
friction process.
Yeah, by email and by interface
Yeah.
groups, with very painful process, arguments around tables and so on.
And the big
Hallway
thing,
encounters, right? Oh
Yeah.
yeah, we agreed. I remember we agreed in the hallway. Right?
I mean, arguments, right? That's you see a lot of that. And
Hey,
forceful personalities,
I see that we're about 5 minutes from the top of the hour, so I'd like to I'd like to thank everybody for this. And Sonal, it was really great. I think we should, every one of these, or at least most of the time, we should be having somebody from a real situation, a real world, coming and talking about this so we can elucidate the patterns that work in the real world. So Janet, really grateful you came on and to talk about this. And,
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, it was,
so I would
think
say
all of
one
a
thing.
pleasure.
Yeah, I would say one thing, Janet, to brainstorm on: is there a common platform? Is there a common software structure that all of these people right now? And what would it take to put something like that together?
Isn't there a universal drawing, a CAD spec requirement set somewhere, or a standards group?
There's several different standards in different industries.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Chet's laughing because he lives this and knows exactly what you just said. Yeah.
Thank you, Janet.
Standards are not standardized.
Janet, would you like to give last words on the topic for us and your thoughts from the discussion today?
Sure. I appreciate everyone's input. I like the different viewpoints. So thank you for having me. I think baseline protocol does have a lot of good direction of where you guys are headed, and I think there is a lot of overlap. So thank you for your input.
Thanks, Janet. A couple of topics. One that came up that it struck me like a ton of bricks. I'd like to bring up and put on the record for anybody out there that wants to find. So we have about $20,000 in grant money that we need to spend before the end of the year. little less than 20. We have a game called Battleship that we want to build or finish, I should say. Several people have started it. We want to get it finished. So we'll be setting up a grant for that. Sonal's working on that. So anybody that wants to work on building the zero knowledge battleship game using baselining as the way for me to be able to say, yep, you missed when you called C4 without giving up my data, the data about what my board looks like, right? Which is a pretty good example of baselining, coordination under zero knowledge. We're finishing that. We want to finish that off, and there's an opportunity for people to make some money on it. So be aware of that. And you can reach out to any of us, go to baseline-protocol.org, join the Slack channel, get in touch with Sonal or myself or any of the other crew on the TSC, and we should be able to get you into that grant opportunity, which is in our repo, baseline-grants. Second thing is, it just struck me, am I crazy? GitHub or Git repositories, baselining Git repositories, private Git repositories, where I need to prove that I have the same library in my repository that you have in your repository. Ryan, am I nuts?
For baselining it? Maybe. We'll look into it.
It has not occurred to me before, and it was kind of staring me in the face. What are the use cases where, if you're all on GitHub, GitHub itself could provide this facility, but private repos in particular, to be able to say under zero knowledge, we're both following the same set of rules, or we have consistency on this particular package, for example. If it's public repos, you don't need the problem is not there, right? But private repos, I don't know, it's kind of tickling my fancy.
Decentralized, I think decentralized teams may have this problem, which we could solve. But yeah, that's an interesting thought that you kicked off right in the last minute of the show.
Yeah, I just thought I'd throw that out there. And another thing.
Just seeding the next show.
Yeah, well, yeah, I know that face from Ryan, so I'm probably full of shit, and he's just not willing to tell me on camera yet. So we'll see. Maybe I'm smoking something, but we'll see. Anyway, if that tickles anybody's fancy, and you know, maybe that's a grant project, baselining GitHub or baselining Git. Interesting. We do have connectors, a whole connectors folder that where more connectors will be going in. And that's my clock telling me that the time is up. It's great to see everybody, and we'll see you next week on the Baseline Show. Until then, keep on baselining.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Everybody.